Welcome, Coleman Report Live. Two special guests, Susie Granger, DRDA, Brent Trelino, New Tech. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Thank you all for joining us. Go back to the certificates. I like to embrace that, Joseph. Everyone should download this, keep it in your files. It's proof for you are getting training for your auditors for SBA, and this is certainly training. So do that, download it, sign it, and go from there. What are we doing first? We talking to Susie? There we go. Or are we doing polls first? What's the order here, guys? I think we're talking to Susie. Oh, we're doing polls first. We'll do polls, and then we'll talk to Susie. Hey, we had a webinar yesterday, and it was how much equity does your institution require for a mixed-use warehousing, general office use construction loan where the borrower is going to be occupying at least 60%. And we like to ask this question just to get a pulse of what's going on in the industry. SBA only requires 10%, but as Lance and I preach, that those are the minimums, and you should probably go more. So that's, I think that's prudent. I'd like to see that the majority of the industry is over that 10% threshold. And let's go to the next poll question, which is more interesting about special single use, specifically a hotel or a restaurant. And I'd like to compare that 63% in the 10 to 20% range to see if we're needing more for single use property. So let's see what you all have to say. Actually, oh no, that makes sense. Yeah, more, you're bumping up 20, 25%. And I think that's prudent. And the reason why we like to do these polls is to give you a sense of what other people are doing in the industry and what your competition is doing. With that, let's hold off on the last question. Let's talk to Susie. Susie, you're a friend. What do you do?
I work for an accounting firm down in Houston, Texas. DRDA has been focused on small businesses and their owners for over 40 years. Because of that, besides your typical tax returns and audits and bookkeeping and all that important work, we also provide a large arm of consultative tools aimed at helping the entrepreneur to start, to grow, and to exit successfully. I'm on the front end of that train. I represent the firm under our BORSA plan. A BORSA is our trademark acronym for what the IRS calls a ROBS, or a rollover as business startup. So I'm assisting entrepreneurs.
401k. 401k.
401ks, IRAs, 403bs. There's a lot of qualified funds that can operate.
Well, and I set you up with the question so you know it's coming, and it's not a mean question, but why are we taking these elderly people, Brent's age and my age, telling them take your money out of your retirement for your older age and risk it on a small business? How do you justify that?
Well, I mean, it seems pretty basic and simple to me. Currently, my typical prospects' retirement funds are being invested in other people's businesses where they have no control. And thankfully, Section 408E of ERISA allows individuals through their 401k to also invest in privately held companies. So this gives that entrepreneur the opportunity to invest in his own business where he has all the control. Well,
I probably shouldn't say, I'm going to say it anyway, but you know, do you want your money invested in Tesla or your own small business? But I won't answer that. You don't have to answer that. Hey, you're on the street. I love Brent. You're on the street. We run a lot of stories on small business optimism. What are your clients telling you how they feel about Main Street?
And it's a nice time to be working in this industry. I tell you what, optimism is up. I've got folks in every major metropolitan area that are up on the small business, are encouraged. They want to purchase a business. They want to expand their existing business. If they're franchisees, they want to grab up some more territories. Optimism is running very high on Main Street today.
Last question. Give us a sense of a typical structure, dollar amount, what the cost is, and how. Give me logistics. You know, I'm a big logistics guy.
Okay, great. So under a BORSA structure, the client is going to access typically between $100,000 and $200,000. That's what I commonly see. Most of my clients are going to be utilizing this process to come up with their equity injection in a 7A or 504 loan. Now,
I'm going to interrupt you there. I assume 100 to 200,000. Therefore, they're not wiping out the entire 401k, correct?
That's right. And that's the client I'm most comfortable with. Maybe he's got 400,000 and he only needs 200 for this deal. I think that's a prudent approach.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Can I say something there, Bob?
Of course, Brent.
I know Susie may not know this, but I met their firm many years ago in the early 2000s when I was living in Dallas and I was working internationally. They come very highly recommended, and when I was working down in the Caribbean, I also had come across them, and they really know what they're doing. So not to give her a plug, but there's more to talk about also than her SBA expertise. So if you see her at Nagel, pull her aside.
And I assume you'll be there next week?
Yes, I will.
And Susie, you'll be there as well? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Last thing, cost. What's this going to cost the entrepreneur?
So the structure itself costs right at $5,000. It's going to take us 30 days to complete the assignment. In that 30 days, we're going to form a C Corp. The operating entity must be a C Corp. It has to do with the types of shareholders the C Corp accepts. We're going to establish the 401k profit sharing plan. I'm going to guide the client through opening the appropriate accounts at the bank, through the roll, and the subsequent investment into the C Corp. Now, the main key in working with a structure like this is in the ongoing compliance. Our firm, as a CPA firm, has got incentive ourselves because of our licensure to make sure we're educating the client appropriately, reminding them, I won't say nagging, but we're CPAs, we get to that point. But that ultimate cost of compliance is going to break out to be just under $1,700 a year. There are other points of compliance that are equally important but don't have a fee associated with them. And we spend a lot of time educating our clients on that compliance component so we can help everybody sleep good at night, make sure we're maintaining compliance.
Well, I think it's a great program. It sounds like you're very prudent in that, and it's a great source of equity. And it's easy to document as an SBA lender where it's coming from, and we're helping people achieve their dreams. So good for you, Susie. Hey, thank you for joining us, and we'll be talking to you later. Thanks a lot, Susie.
Okay.
Hey, Brent. Hey, Brent, big news. You've been appointed Senior Vice President, Risk and Operations of NewTek. Tell us about that.
Well, I'm been appointed at the parent level, which is the development corporation that controls all the portfolio companies. And recently, NewTek has been expanding with a joint venture with BlackRock and some operations with Deutsche Bank and with Capital One. So I think Barry and Peter Downs, the management team, being the largest non-bank lender out there and going up against some of the other non-bank lenders who are, part of REITs or whatever, it's getting more complex, but also offering more services like banks do and things that banks can't do. So I think it's kind of exciting because I get to look at a different kind of risk and still look at the 7A side, but I'm happy I'm going to be answering to the board and to Chief Lending Officers Peter Downs, and I'll still be able to do advice and work with compliance in the industry and cooperate with you also, Bob, and some of the other compliance.
I love it. I know you and I are talking about doing some training. Hey, I know there's some people on the call who don't know who you are. What did you do for SBA at your time there?
So I was the director for the Office of Credit Risk Management from 2012 until late 2015. I had about a 4-month stint as the associate deputy administrator for field operations, running all of the field ops in 2015, and I humbly I don't know what people think, but I came up with the whole Paris metric system, the Paris and SMART system. That's now the oversight protocol for SBA.
Yeah, if you have an issue with Paris or fees, talk to Brent.
You want to know how to manipulate your metrics, just ask me.
Very good. And we're going to be doing something about Paris and review. We're going to do something about that. We're going to announce that for June or so. Hey, Brent, I'd love to have you stick around. We have another poll question, some questions, and get your input on that. Do you use SBA cap lines? What is your opinion about this program, Brent?
Well, it's a really good program. Unfortunately, some of the folks that are focused on selling to the secondary market don't use it as much, but I think it's really good for the borrowers. It seems to be more prevalent with bank usage than it is with non-bank usage because of the secondary market ability to sell. It's hard to sell a cap line.
Yeah, you can't sell them on that. The reason why I asked the question, it's a little, we're going to do a cap line webinar next month. It's a new offering, so for
Well,
those
it's
who
sure a lot better than factoring, and it's a lot better than just receiving the financing.
And cost.
Great.
Now, the problem, what I've said, the number one takeaway, this isn't traditional SBA lending. This is not a 10-year loan where you amortize it out and you book it, and every couple, as long as they're making the payments once a year, you get the financial. This is heavy monitoring, but you get to charge appropriate fees, and it's a great way to help your borrowers build. So SBA shares in the risk. So I'm a big fan of the program, so we're going to do that. SBA announced yesterday, and I'm sure there's a backstory on this, and we don't have to do that, but here's the issue. SBA is getting a lot of pressure from Congress about eligibility, and this came about because I'm sure there was a case study where a lender went and changed ownership, and there was a minority shareholder who had a piece in a lot of different SBA loans. We're not saying that you can't change ownership. All we're saying now is just get SBA's approval within the first 12 months of a final disbursement. See, the pause means we go to the next topic, Joseph. That's and we'd like to do this, Brent. We did the construction webinar yesterday for SBA lending, and these were my 4 fundamental construction rules, and I apologize if we're being too simplistic, but again, we have people from all over the industry. First rule in construction lending is there's no collateral. It's the riskiest type of lending. You got a piece of land and something, and you talk about heavy monitoring, you got to do it. So a successful construction loan is dependent on good performance of a third party who's not your borrower, i.e. the contractor. So one of our takeaways is get the financials from the contractor. SBA doesn't require that, but underwrite the contractor. Not only underwrite the contractor's financial ability, but look at their ability on what other type of projects are they doing. Can they perform? And finally, be careful dispersing money. We can go down the rabbit hole of Inspector General reports of lenders who simply dump construction money into the borrower's account without verifying anything, and guess what? You have a guaranteed denial. What's your opinion about SBA construction lending, Brent?
Well, I did a lot of the loans have freedom mortgage, particularly in the hotel construction and the hotel refurbishment. And my main recommendation is if you don't have the in-house staff, really look at, there's some really good third-party folks out there to help you.
You have to do it. You have to do it. Yeah.
And you got to do it. And more, the Guaranteed Purchase Center is looking at how you administrate that. If the deal goes bad, they really want to see that did you have the controls in there as you were dispersing and managing your disbursements.
And where you're going to get in trouble is if you don't do it. If you do it and the loan goes bad. See, here's the problem also. If these loans go bad, they're at early default because the project doesn't get completed, so they default within the first 18 months. And so Herndon's going to be looking at this very, very carefully. And if you don't have any type of disbursement controls, whether in-house or third party, you're going to have an issue with that guarantee. So I'm a big fan of this. Do it. It's a niche. I've always said riches and niches, but let's do it right. Part of the questions came about, and Brent, we're going to do 2 questions from yesterday's webinar. Does a third-party fund control inspection report showing the project is 100% complete be a substitute for an appraisal certification? And we had Joey Bonnet on yesterday from Partner Engineering, and he's the expert on this. He said, no. I said, you need to go and get the certification from the appraiser that everything's done. All we're showing is that it's completed, but we're not certifying that it's been done correctly.
It's a check and balance. It's nice to know that both are synonymous.
And now this is interesting. We got several questions on this, Brent, and you were talking about this. Is a number of lenders are doing interim construction financing themselves, i.e. conventionally, then they take it out with an SBA loan. Brent, by definition, can they do that?
Not in the 7A for sure, because it's same institution.
It's refinancing. It's not a construction loan. It's refinancing same institution debt.
They gave us a reprieve during the shutdown,
right,
but that doesn't carry over to what I would consider a permanent program.
Right. So I think that's where some lenders are getting that. So if you have, first of all, get the SBA guarantee, because that's the riskiest part of the transaction is building it. Once it's done, almost flip it. If you want to go conventional after that, that's fine. But you cannot do that. And if you have that structure, and a couple of our people on the webinar did, Lance and I were advising them, it's a refinance of same institution debt. That doesn't mean you can't do it, but you need to follow all those refinance rules. And you can't simply flip it. If you flip it to a 7A loan on a PLP basis, you're not going to have a guarantee. Correct, Brent?
Yes.
Okay, very good. We have some upcoming events. I'm pushing this. I know a lot of you will be in Nagel next week. America West in Rancho Mirage and all these regional conferences. I'm a big fan of that. Hot off the press, I was talking to Susie Granger, and she said Malk has announced April 20th in somewhere in Houston. I don't know, down there. So we'll add that onto it next week for that. Lance and I are doing webinars next week. Yeah, and go back to the training. We're offering all these training courses. Lance just refilmed closing. And we have underwriting, and we just refilmed express training. And so thank you all for supporting that. That's doing very well. Finally, a couple of webinars coming up. We have credit elsewhere and 159 documentation. Lance is going to be doing that in 2 weeks. At our 11th annual hospitality financing, we got all the boys back on that. The cool thing about that, Brent, I don't know if you've seen this, is they do something called a heat map. And because we were talking about construction, and they give a map of the United States where green is supply is under
saturating.
Yeah, or red where we're saturated. And if you see something red, you may want to think twice about doing a construction loan. And it's interesting in how they do that. So
I'll tell you, just to kind of reinforce that, when I got to SBA in 2012, we had to look back to see what was happening because we had a high default rate. And when we found out, we started seeing we hadn't been using these heat maps, and you could see where you were getting high concentration. So it's a good tool to be aware of.
Yeah, and I think it's it's location. There's good locations, and it was interesting. For every year, Miami was red. I think last year it turned green. So now this year it's probably going to go red again. But they do great analytics, and they bring us up to date on what's going on and all the good stuff in terms of. The thing about a hotel financial statement is you have all these off-balance sheet metrics that you need to know. You need to know revenue per room, revenue per key, the value per key, and these things are not on the financial statements. So this is one of our better offerings that we have, and that's what we have in that. Hey, Brent, congratulations. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, and that concludes today's program. Thanks.
Take care.